Hey, boys and girls, weather report for August 16th, 2021. I am 25,790 days old today, in case anybody is keeping track. So, and we got a bug on the screen, so I'm going to take the bug off the screen.
So, very bright bug.
Yeah, so we got a couple of videos today. One is Otangelo failing, and the other one is John Maddox and SFT failing. So,
can we talk about some of the links that I put in the we put in the description real quick?
You can talk about them. Yes,
I would love to talk about them. Let's see. One of them is a link to an upcoming talk that Arvin Ra is going to be having with Francesca. I'm not looking at anything. Strava Pukalus.
Stavropolu.
Okay, and she's a Hebrew scholar, ancient Near East scholar, and it's about basically science and the scientific method and how it gets done right and how it gets done wrong. That should be very interesting. And then of course we all know that Jason Torn started his channel over the weekend and had that confrontation with Otangelo. It was essentially a dialogue. And then it ended like most conversations end with Otangelo. But he also had a new video drop today, which is his review of a debate or dialogue between a panel of presuppositionalists and a panel of atheists. So take a look at that one and do some comments and hit the like button and subscribe for him so he can get his channel going and we can give him a chance to succeed.
Yep. And what else we got? We've radiometric dating and some creation. I think it's a creationist site, but the guy is trying to straighten out a little bit on radiometric dating. I couldn't quite get a read on the site, but I put that on there because I've been looking at potassium argon dating, and that refers to the Sky Out video with Maddox and Standing for Truth or whatever. Also want to mention we found a book called Protocells, linked in the description. Not a source for it. It's called Bridging Nonliving and Living Matter, which is pretty good. And on the weather report for Friday, August 13th, Snake was right, provided us with another 20 papers that he was looking at. So that description is just full of links. If anybody would care to go over there and look for some ABio stuff and some other interesting papers. So, and that was all I got. What else? So we got a new person, Fly Guy, a person who tortures Drosophila with mannequins is the bio I got for you. You want to tell us anything, or?
Well, I think that's what Drace thinks, that I torture flies with mannequins. But I do that. I did anyway. But I've moved on to other things.
Spider mannequins. Do they react to your spider mannequins?
Okay. So yeah, this was a paper that was published a while ago, looking at whether flies have innate behaviors to predators. So we did live spiders and fake spiders as it would be as a control, and all kinds of other things. We tested mutants. We tested all sorts of things. How they detect predators, for example, do they detect them visually or smell or whatever? So that was published a while ago. But that was a side project in my old lab. My main project is looking at how serotonin modulates learning and memory.
Okay.
And that I'm currently working on that paper. Hopefully it'll be out a couple of months.
So the spider fly paper, if you would link that in private chat, I don't know if you and tell me if you want me to put it in public. I get in the description. I can, but I would like to look at that. I'm very interested. What did you find as far as innate wiring in response to predators?
Sure. So I mean, you have to think about that. We're using flies that are laboratory strains, so they've lived comfy lives inside of a laboratory for countless thousands of generations. Right. So one of the questions that we asked is, well, would this strain that has been babied, you know, they get fed, they get everything they need handed to them. They don't have to fight for anything. That's the wild type laboratory strain. Would they react to predators? Do they still have it? And sure enough, they do. So absolutely, they still react to predators. And we pinpointed that the main way that they detect a predator, and we used jumping spiders, which are their arch enemies, and they primarily detect them visually. And we used a series of fly mutants, flies that can't smell, flies that can't see, flies that can't do this, can't do that, to be able to pinpoint. So we looked at a lot of behavior data to pinpoint what was happening. So it was an interesting little side project, but that was about.
Were you able to figure out how that wires up at birth? There's this sort of urban legend that people react to seeing a coiled up a snake, right? And that it might be an innate reaction that we're trying to figure out. Basically, something wired up in the amygdala, and I don't know how much we found out, but I mean, if this fly is wired to react to a spider, what in the hell is he reacting to, and how does that wire up with just genetics?
Well, those are good questions, and certainly those are questions that can be probed using the Drosophila model, because we have extensive controls to control the genetic expression and development of flies.
Yeah.
Using something called the GAL4 UAS system. That the paper that I'm talking about, where I'm the first author, we didn't go that far. We just looked at behavior.
Okay.
But certainly those are good questions. Like I said, the main way that we found that they detect the spider is through vision, just by looking at them. They have excellent vision, and even though a large part of their brain is also dedicated to smell. But
so, what kind of a visual cortex does a fruit fly have?
Well, their brain isn't structured in the same way that ours is.
Yeah.
So they don't have a true cortex like a vertebrate brain does. They have neurons that are the same, very similar to vertebrate neurons, where they has a soma, has dendrites and axons, and they use very similar, if not the same, neurotransmitters. There are some neurotransmitters that are specific to invertebrates, but overall it's the same.
Yeah.
But their brains are organized differently.
But that's interesting, because I mean, if you look at humans, with the visual cortex the way it is, and then there's the temporal lobe that sort of interprets different shapes. So if something genetically wired up in the temporal lobe that had statistically had the reaction that it would jump at a snake, it's possible that ended up basically being selected for or selected somehow in the history of our mammalian lineage. But it would be very interesting, because it always I started out in neuroscience with the question, how in the hell they did that 0.70 waist to hip ratio thing, the evolutionary psychologists back in the late 90s, and my question was, before I knew anything about the brain at all, how in the hell would an instinct wire up with genetics, right? How would it wire a brain? And so there's a possibility that statistically these certain shapes fire off certain neurons. They end up sending a afferent to the whatever the equivalent of fly would be, the amygdala, that causes a flight reaction, right? Automatically. Like that is like stamped in the genetics, which is very interesting. So I mean, and it's been a while since I've checked back to find out how much we know about how innate responses are wired up. But you know what I'm talking about with the 0.70 to hip
absolutely. I understand what you're saying. And I'm pretty sure that there are, if you do a search, you're going to find papers where in flies, those circuits have been identified, because Again,
yeah,
that's the whole point of using something like Drosophila, which it doesn't have its brain is still fairly complex, and its behaviors are very robust. So like flies sleep and they court and they fight, there's aggression, all kinds of behaviors that you would find in vertebrates, but their brains are much more accessible, tractable, right? So we can interrogate individual circuits. So I'm sure if you did a little digging, you probably find somebody somewhere has identified particular circuits that are involved in predator recognition, for example.
Yeah. Yeah, it's got to be an overall statistic, because for something like that to be selected for, I mean, it's really difficult to go from like some cognitive thing, something that we see, some shape that we see, to go from that to a fight or flight reaction, and there has to be some statistics that are wiring it up, and that of course would get selected for. But that's all very interesting to me. But just when you were talking about the Drosophila, it just occurred to me that would have to be a statistical thing from our basically visual cortex, or visual system in the temporal lobe, that hooked up to the amygdala, that gave us that flight reaction when we see a snake.
Right.
But
well, flies, I mean, they don't have a temporal lobe. So,
yeah,
for example, just to give you an idea, all of the optic processing of the fly, they don't have a visual lobe. It's all done in the eye itself. The eye is layered.
Really?
In the brain. Yeah, it's all done in the eye, and then the information is sent to central areas of the brain, like it's something called the mushroom bodies, or the central complex. And these structures then interpret that information and put it together to help the fly make a decision. And then that information is sent out to other parts of the brain that activate, a fight or flight, or whatever it's going to do. So all of that has been pretty much mapped out in the fly, which is pretty cool, because you can make flies do all kinds of things using things like optogenetics and thermogenetics. Things that we can do in rats and rodents as well, but not to the same level.
Yeah, there's a fly brain.
Yeah, that's a fly brain. So So I mean, that middle part there, there's got two halves. Those are the olfactory lobes, kind of in the center, and then those are the optic lobes. The subesophageal ganglia down there by the fingers, and then you can't see the mushroom bodies because that's deep in the brain. But the mushroom bodies are really important to the fly's learning and memory, its ability to make decisions. The mushroom bodies kind of does the same job of the hypothalamus and the hippocampus, among other things. Okay. And I'm saying that loosely. And somebody's going to hear this and they're going to send me emails. How dare you say that? It's like,
yeah. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and so that's part of the connectome that they're showing there.
Yeah. Yep. Here's another one.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Okay, please get that paper to Dessel, the one you were talking about, and so he can get it to me, or put it in private chat if you want to share with the group that's in here. Okay, little Otangelo. So the main thing I wanted to go after with Otangelo is he keeps reading this Eugene Koonin quote, and so does every other creationist around. That's all they ever do is they read this one page in Eugene Koonin's book, and I think it's it's toward the end of the book where Koonin is speculating about abiogenesis and how rudimentary the field is, right? And so he says, and I think it's actually in the appendix, Synopsis and Perspective, where he says, when judged by the straightforward criterion of reaching or even approaching the ultimate goal, the origin of life field is a failure. And that's from Eugene Koonin's book, Logic of Chance. You all have heard this quote, right, from Eugene Koonin, and they will say he's one of the most respected, geneticists and biologists, and he is indeed. And Jason didn't know that or didn't know of him, so he was kind of looking him up on the fly to find out if he was.
Repeat the quote again. Repeat the quote.
Hang on a second. I'm about to pop up the quote.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
because I can think of a context where that is definitely true, in the sense that you don't have a goal. And
okay, Kunin for some reason became fascinated with the multiverse and the possibility that the probabilities when you have a multiverse would be solved, right? But Eugene Kunin's primary research is a little bit higher in evolution, and he is one of the 10 most respected evolutionists or evolutionary biologists. I use that word. Creationists are teaching us how to talk. So he is highly respected, but his work is not particularly in abiogenesis. And for some reason, Kunin got into this multiverse thing, and he produced two appendixes, basically. And these creationists, they always quote, but they only quote from this page. But the whole rest of the book is about how things evolved, because that's what he does. That's his work, his research, and he does it with genetics. And he got into comparative genetics and basically phylogenies with genes before we had any really good data. And he actually used punch cards to do some of the work that he did. So anyway, Eugene Kunin is not the creationist friend, is what I wanted to point out. But he did say this. And what he's doing is just being honest about a field that, is very, very difficult. Like he says, let's see, emergence of life, certainly. Okay, certainly, they don't read this part either. Certainly, this is not due to lack of experimental and theoretical effort, but due to the extraordinarily intrinsic difficulty and complexity of the problem, right? I mean, this is a really tough problem that we're trying to solve with abiogenesis. And they keep cherry picking quotes from this poor guy, who is certainly not with them at all. And I hate when they do that. They do it with every famous evolutionary biologist that we have.
You could also add to that not a lot of funding in that area too, right? Compared when you're comparing to other disciplines, right?
Yeah, well, then he goes on to say not everything is bleak, which they will never read this part. Major props for the origin of life have been discovered. And he goes on and explains it. But then at the end of it, he likes to conjecture about his multiverse idea. And it's just a little idiosyncrasy of this one researcher that he became fascinated with the multiverse. So anyway, I just wanted to point that out. And I was hoping that Jason Torn would come in so he could direct us a little bit on Otangelo.
Did you invite him?
I did invite him.
You sent him an email and everything? Cool. Well,
he has not.
He may be busy working.
Yeah. So anyway. So Fly Guy, which other creationists are you familiar with in this little sphere?
Well, I mean, so I listen to the, what's available on YouTube, while I'm doing whatever. So I listen to things like, the Atheist Experience or something like that. And he's been on there a few times. Right? I think he's now banned from the Atheist Experience.
He's been banned about 20 times.
Okay, so I don't know. And I've heard him and other guys like Billy, who comes on every now and then. I'm not going to say he's a nobody, but he's persistent, to say the least. And he has similar talking points to Otangelo. This idea that no progress has been made in 70 years in the field of abiogenesis or chemical evolution. Then they quote mine particular researchers in the sense, I think I don't have to explain that quote mining is a bad thing because you're taking somebody out of context. And I mean, I don't keep track, so I can't give you this long list of creationists. I mean, definitely. It's a related field, but things like apologists like Darth Dawkins or whatever, they usually stick to their pre-supper scripts, really not touching too much on evolution or whatever. But it's a similar shtick that they have, right? So just machine gun a bunch of bullet points, really not address anything, don't reply to what people say, and then dance around like you've won.
Yep. Pretty much what we deal with every day here. So.
Yeah. I mean, again, for me, this was Drace was kind enough to invite me. or maybe not kind of. I don't know. And so I just thought I'd pop in and see how things are.
Okay.
But I don't know if you guys have like specific talking points that you want to address that Otangelo talks about.
Oh, we'll just play a little bit of it and listen to it. That's usually what we do. So,
all right.
Let me see. I'm trying to figure out what is wrong with my life. Okay, I'm good now. I have so many windows open normally that I frequently get what Scott calls Windows Tourette's. It's like, which is a very serious affliction, right, Scott?
Very serious. If you have to hear
Very serious. Yeah, you have to. Yeah, it's pretty bad. Anyway, okay. So there was just this part, I think.
Where is his? Where does he teach?
Audio coming through?
Yes.
Yes.
Teach? Where does he do research? Where does he work?
Well,
Do you know anything?
Yes, he is an advisory editorial board of Trends in Genetics, and he is one of the most respected geneticists and theoretical biologists. And he's very well known.
There's the potted plant look, but so yeah, they're talking about Eugene Koonin, and they always like when they cherry pick a quote, they're always quick to point out he is the most respected biologist, and he said this thing. He said, "Oh, it's a failure." They got this one little quote, and it just drives me crazy because you got to read the rest of the book. And when you look at the rest of the book is about the extended synthesis in evolution, and the chapters are like nothing about denying evolution at all. It's all pro-evolution, and it sort of drives me crazy. Anyway.
Speed, did you get a chance? I don't know if you saw the other, I believe it could have been on Praise's stream last night, where Mark Reed got in a huge fight with Otangelo over this very topic. They went at each other pretty hard, and Mark really gave him a hard time about quote mining and misrepresenting, scientific papers. And it was probably it wasn't a long duration. It was probably like 20 minutes or so, I think, but they went at it pretty hard on that. I didn't know if you saw that or not.
No, I didn't. Could you find a timestamp and link? Maybe
I can do that for you if you'd like. Yep.
You've never heard me ask that question before.
Speed, what is the copyright date for The Logic of Chance? It's like 2011, 2012, something like that?
2012. Yeah, I think it's 2012. Hang on a second. I got it here. Oh, you got to go. 2012 is what I have written on the cover, because I always write the dates on the cover. But the chapters are towards a modern synthesis of evolutionary biology. Let's see. He's got stuff on eukaryotic evolution, the fundamentals of evolution, modern synthesis, comparative genomics, evolving genomascapes, which is what he's into. Genomic systems biology and the universals of evolution. So have you read it, or have you looked at this one, Dessel?
I haven't looked at The Logic of Chance. I've just read through his articles on the origin and evolution of the genetic code.
Yeah, what's your opinion of him? Of Eugene?
So, I mean, so he's writing during a time where, in the second paragraph after the quote that Otangelo gives, he talks about the hydrothermal vent scenario in a very theoretical way. He's basically saying there's a chance, it's not all bleak. It's a chance that this might have promising avenues of research for us when it comes to hydrothermal vents. So it looked like it was pretty theoretical, which makes sense that he's publishing that in 2011 because a lot of the work from the main guys who are pushing hydrothermal vents now, like Lane, Russell, and Martin, a lot of the work that has gone beyond just theory has come out post 2011. So there was the construction of their reactor, which they published on in 2015. there were the research articles on the effects of thermophoresis, the heat gradient to concentrate the organics. Most of that is post 2011, 2012. Then you have the possibility of the CO2 reduction by H2 by a pH gradient, which is a central component of the alkaline vent theory. And that was given experimental support in 2020. And so, like, if we're talking about the idea of having a plausible, coherent picture for the origins of life that Kunin is complaining about in that quote, I would argue that we indeed have that now, today, a decade after his writing, with the alkaline hydrothermal vent theory. And there's one, and I do see, like, I've seen people quote from his articles on the origin and evolution of the genetic code, because he expresses some skepticism about progress being made in the field in those papers too. But when he says that it's it's a failure, when he's talking about that in these papers, he frames that in a particular way where we have multiple plausible pathways, but his gripe is that there's been little progress in determining which of those pathways is actually true, or whether or not some composite of them is true. And so toward the end of his 2009 paper, he outright says that two of the theories that he discusses, which are the adaptive theory and also frozen accident. Hold on, I'm sorry, I'm kind of messing this up. It is, the adaptive theory is one, but I'm forgetting the other. And these certainly play a part in the evolution of the origin of the code. Yeah. So he is coming out in support of particular theories that he finds convincing. It's not like he's saying, like Otangelo is trying to frame it, where it's all just a failure. There's no plausible pathways whatsoever. It's all just bunk. That's not really what Kunin is complaining about. Well, he's these articles.
It's not really a complaint at all. It's a preface to, like when somebody starts writing a paper, they'll say, okay, no progress has been made on this, and then the rest of the paper is about the progress that they made, right? So he's opening this up as a preface, and he's being humble, and he's not an abiogenesis researcher. I don't think he gets into that much. He comes in a little bit later around eukaryotes. So anyway, it has nothing to do with the opinion that the field is a failure. It's simply a cherry-picked quote, and he should have, if he had known what was going to happen with this quote, he would have written it differently.
Maybe so. I mean,
12 years ahead.
Yeah, so I just, my thing is, though, like, he was really painting it as if this one quote given by Kunin would be like the attitude of most of the researchers in the field. Like, that's what he was trying to convince Jason of. This is what I'm getting from the scientists themselves. This is how they would describe their field, is basically what he was saying there. But that's not really true. There are tons of abiogenesis researchers that are way more optimistic than that about the progress that the field is making than Kunin is, or at least that Kunin was at that time. So go ahead.
You know what I mean? Scientists, no matter how optimistic they are, they have to be careful how they word things, right? I mean, you can't just,
Well, I think that they're sometimes they're a little too careful, because sometimes they try to be really, really humble and very, very tentative, and like, I guess they view that as them being responsible in their wording. But because they do that, I think that sometimes they understate their case. So people can treat it as if it's just theoretical and doesn't mean much, even though, they've actually given substantive experimental support to a particular thing.
Yeah. Well, if I could chime in quickly, I'm just sort of restating something that's already been mentioned, and that is that original research papers, primarily I'm going to focus on, have a particular structure in biology where, as someone mentioned, in the abstract or the introduction, the authors will state the problem that they will address, right? And if that's all you report from the paper, like so-and-so said this, then it's going to make it seem as though that's what they found, right? That was the entire entirety of the paper, when in fact, that's not what it is at all. You know, if you look in the results or the conclusion, the authors are addressing that problem adequately and reporting what they found to solve that problem or to propose to solve that problem or other work. And so what creationists are doing is they're misrepresenting that. And again, I know somebody already mentioned this, but I think it's important to state that. And what Dre said, I mean, when writing in the literature, you do have to be careful, because if you overstate your work, you may be in danger of having to retract it or something like that. So you have to be really conservative. You'll hear things like if, maybe, possibly, the data suggests, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And so
they love that. The creationists love those words. In fact, who was it that just recently produced a whole list of those words as part of his case? I can't remember. We reviewed a video. Oh, that Dirk Kirsten, that guy. You remember we were looking at his videos? He had all those words on his on one of his little short YouTube videos. Possibly, you know, and he was using it as a critique of evolution, and it's just like, no, this is how people talk when they're being. You don't walk into a room and I mean, if you're the guy that invented the gadget, you don't walk into the room and say, I'm the guy that invented the gadget, I know everything about it. You walk in and say, I know a little bit about this, right? That's just the way you walk into a room if you're a normal, humble human being. I don't know. Anyway, it just drives me crazy.
So I think it's a fundamental misunderstanding of how science works. Either whether it's I don't want to be ugly about this, but it's either through ignorance or it's either through deliberately misrepresenting it, you know, as to how science is supposed to work in terms of reporting findings. This is what I find a lot of creationists, one way or the other, misrepresent it.
Apparently you haven't watched a lot of our content, but getting ugly on creationists is kind of what we do here.
So I just want to because Kunin had that pessimistic paragraph there talking about there's no plausible pathway currently known. And he wrote that in 2011, 2012. So just to contrast that, because Otangelo is describing this attitude as the general attitude of the practitioners in the field. So I want to contrast that just by giving a quick quote from Nick Lane about how he feels about the status of abiogenesis research. He says, quote, by this analysis, the conditions that best encourage the origins of life are found in alkaline vents. Perhaps your heart is sinking. Why narrow down the options so tightly? Surely there must be other ways. Well, maybe. In an infinite universe, anything is possible, but that doesn't make it probable. Alkaline vents are probable, end quote. And so he thinks the opposite. He thinks that there is a plausible, even probable pathway to abiogenesis. And so just to contrast Lane's attitude as an abiogenesis researcher to what Kunin is saying in his book, for Otangelo to act as if that's the general feel of the entire field of practitioners is not true.
Yeah, and whether you prefer Nick Lane's views or David Deemer's, Deemer has his own, hot springs vents kind of not vents but pools, hot spring pools kind of approach to abiogenesis that he seems very hopeful and very positive about. So it's not like there's only one avenue of exploration in which scientists of the field are feeling hopeful.
Yeah. So this is the heading of the heading that they cherry picked that quote from. So and I think this is in his appendix where he's talking about the inflation cosmology and multiverses and stuff. And it's just a thing that Kunin has. He's got another paper on it, and he was taken by the idea, I guess. But not a physicist, right? And not particularly an abiogenesis researcher. So anyway, I hope he is one of their favorite quotes to do. Standing for Truth does it. They all do it. It just drives me crazy. What are we going to do with these creationists? I just don't know. Suggestions?
Well, we can go over to their websites and say that we've refuted them and give them a link back to our channel.
Right. And then they say, damage control, dodgeball. whatever. I don't know. So Jason, where's Jason? He was just here.
Yeah, he went all Hollywood and showed up with his sunglasses on the bay and everything.
Yeah,
and then he just popped off.
He's the victim. Jason is the victim that we wanted to talk to.
Maybe the creationists kidnapped him.
He's been Otangelo'd. I've been Otangelo'd like 3 or 4 times, and about 15 minutes into it, every time I'm just like, okay, how do I get out of this? How do I run away from what I've done here? The idea that I could actually reason with this man. Anyway,
there's a whole hour ahead of you of being read to in quote mind.
Yeah. So where does he rage quit? Does he rage quit?
Towards the end. It's at the very end that they get frustrated with each other, and Otangelo just says goodbye.
How do you know what I can or what I cannot understand? You are making claims about me. Why? Well, I have books. I have peer-reviewed science papers. Well, I can read them, and eventually I can understand them. So if you think that I am making just claims which I don't even understand, then we shouldn't have. Then okay, so then this conversation is over.
I mean, look, man, you're making claims on very complicated subjects of which you don't have any formal education. Okay, you don't know any. You know what? Do you even?
Goodbye.
All right. See you.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
I do not need an education. I have Google.
I have my blog, which I can read from. So, Jason, you are the victim. So how do you feel? Your first interview on your new channel, and you pick Otangelo. What the hell were you thinking?
Yeah, what was I thinking? Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
You tried to reason with him.
I thought he was going to be reasonable, but I guess I was wrong on that. Yeah, I mean, it started off okay, but it devolved quickly. And, at a certain point, I just wasn't going to put up with it. So, I'm not surprised. So,
yeah, I was trying to figure out a few things. There were a couple points. Yeah, it was what was it? Okay, he didn't have a theory, basically. They have no theory for intelligent design. Yet he insists that it was an intelligence that designed life. I don't know. You guys were probably in the very beginning, you were trying to reason with him, and it was kind of the same old deal. It's like, I don't have to tell you how it happened.
Yeah, and it seemed like in the beginning he was making a suggestion and agreeing that methodological naturalism couldn't address his positions on theism, and that it was faith-based, that you had a certain level of faith that this would exist, and you couldn't use methodological naturalism and science to understand those concepts. But then later on, he suddenly shifted and is like, "Oh, I am going to do that." And I'm like, "Wait a second. You were saying that you can't do that. Then what's your methodology?" And he was going back and forth on that, and that kind of irritated me.
Yeah, he does this induction thing, or
the eliminative induction.
Yeah, logic, or the what is the best explanation for it, Jason? What is the best explanation?
Sorry, that was wrong. That was rude. I apologize to the room.
Apology accepted. I don't apologize enough, do I? Anyway, so is there any part of this that you would like to dig into, or I do have a transcript for this.
Wow. No, I mean, just the fact that I appreciate you going over it. There's not any specific part other than I don't want to look at the parts where he turns green. I don't know if you noticed that. Yeah.
Was that kryptonite?
I don't know what it was. Yeah, exactly.
I think it's kryptonite.
I think his GPU is an old GPU, and so that was the problem, because it was on Zoom. No, I mean, you guys were talking about that Kuhnen part, the part where he was talking about Kuhnen, of which I readily admit, like, I'm not an evolutionary biologist. And I knew he was going to go to the intelligent design evolutionary biology component. When I initially posed the idea of us debating, I suggested young Earth creationism, and he didn't want to do that. So he wanted to talk about naturalism, so which is fine.
Yeah. So I just wanted to point out to you, because I heard you trying to figure out who Kuhnen was. And so in the last 15 minutes, we kind of told you who Kuhnen is and why he had this one little clipped piece in his book, basically. But Kuhnen is all about evolutionary biology. And this entire book is about evolutionary biology and how things evolve. And Otangelo apparently... Well, in fact, I know they got this from a creation site, because you could go to creation sites and find this quote all over the place. They've never looked at the book. They have no idea what even the chapters are. So, but I have the book right here.
The fact that you mentioned that only emphasizes, I think, the point that I was making, which was that, and again, I'm not slighting. Well, maybe I am slighting Otangelo, but but to quote mine and to essentially like start with an assumption of creationism and then just pull out specific quotes from particular folks that support your position doesn't seem like an honest interlocutor, and it doesn't suggest somebody who has read the literature extensively or who has a formal education in this whatsoever, or even has studied it much, that he has a preconceived notion and that he's trying to formulate very specific evidence from specific folks to try to structure that argument, which I don't think that's being genuine.
Yeah.
Anyways.
So now we got a little Maddox, if anybody's interested. Speaking in tongues. Anyway, the reason I'm bringing this video clip is because I really want to know what the hell he was talking about. So if there's a Maddox whisperer out there that can tell me what the hell he's talking about. But he's fighting with Skyout about Skyout, I think, is a Christian. And
yep. Yes, he is.
Yeah, but he's old Earth.
Yes.
And these guys are young Earth. So Standing for Truth and Maddox came to beat him up. And that's about all they did. So, but the name of his stream is "If You Hate Skyout or any Smoky Saint or anyone else, come in," and they did. So
before you play that really quick, just wanted to introduce Jason to Fly Guy.
Yes.
So Fly Guy is a neurobiologist, and Jason Torn is a climate scientist. Both of you guys have similar interests in terms of science study and looking and laughing at the creationists. So just figured you guys might like to meet each other.
Yeah. Yes. Hey, nice to meet you.
Hello, nice to meet you.
Yeah.
Okay, you ready? So I just want to know what the hell he's talking about.
Okay, so Scott, I got a question for you. You seem to think I caught this like right before I came in. You seem to think that like 6,000-7,000 years is not that long of a period of time. Is that correct?
6,000 years ago?
No, just like 6 or 7,000 years. It was your position that is not a very long time.
Yeah, it's not a long time at all.
Okay, so how long do you think it would take for plants and animals with zero barrier created by humanity to basically for all the plants to like regrow over the planet?
Well, okay. It's kind of difficult for me to put in that context. I can only put in the biblical context. That's the only way I can really understand.
That's not what dude. No. You're dodging. And that's not the question I asked you.
Dodging.
I asked you from the conventional paradigm. How long do you think it would actually take if there was no humanity blocking? Nobody was cutting the freaking grass. Okay. How long do you think it would actually take for all the plants to basically erase or to cover the planet?
I have no idea.
Okay, so what in the hell is he talking about?
This is Mad X's attempt to argue young Earth. Is basically is what he's attempting to do, right?
Really a bad argument, don't you think?
Yeah, a little bit.
Well, let's listen a little more here.
I'm surprised he never argues this. Well, very rare, you know.
Yeah, I know. He's definitely a young Earth creationist, but he won't say it out loud. Yeah.
Right. Yep. Exactly.
Okay, well, let's put it in context.
I thought he was going to go.
I remember when I was a kid, this house.
What's that?
Sorry, I thought he was going to go into the waiting time problem, but now with this question, it looks like he's going to go into an entirely different thing.
It's something about the grass growing in his yard. I don't know.
My parents bought the backyard. The house hadn't been occupied for like 8 months, right? And
here it is.
Erase. I think it would actually take all the plants to basically erase or to cover the planet.
I have no idea.
Okay, well, let's put it in context, right? So I remember when I was a kid, this house my parents bought, the backyard, the house hadn't been occupied for like 8 months, right? And the grass and like all the plants and stuff in the backyard were like almost 6 feet tall. And
oh my God,
bushes were everywhere, right? That was in 8 months. Okay. When you drive down the street, do you live in like a concrete jungle, or do you live like where there's actually grass?
A concrete jungle?
Like, do you live in a major metro area, or do you live like where there's vegetation? Do you see?
No, I don't know. I live like in the city.
Okay. So, do you think that potentially, like many humans, and I live in Nashville, and I live in a pretty major metro myself. Do you think that perhaps your perspective gets blinded by the concrete jungle you live in?
I don't know what you mean by it.
By concrete jungle, I mean something that's humans built, right? So you're in a metro area. Everything you see around you is buildings and streets. There's a little piece of grass here and there, but it gets like mowed every day and stuff, right? However, if the second that humans stop doing this, things just get taken over, right? By vegetation very, very rapidly. And modern humans live in this fantasy land, and especially Western civilization humans live in this freaking fantasy land that somehow this kind of thing could not just happen. Like, I'm talking about plants and animals, stuff like taking over the world, basically.
Okay.
I don't know what he's talking about.
Okay. The grass in his backyard grows really fast and gets 6 feet tall. And most of us have never seen a vegetable, so we're not aware of how fast vegetables can grow. So therefore, young Earth creationism. Because it all could have happened really fast.
Yeah.
That's his point.
It seems like he's trying to make an argument that because vegetation can grow fast, that therefore the results we see in the rock record could occur fast,
right,
which I think is totally nonsensical. So I don't know where he gets that. I mean, like, as an example, I hear people talk about like the Grand Canyon a lot for young Earth creationism, how it, yeah. And if you know anything about the Grand Canyon, that the base of the Grand Canyon is what's called the Vishnu schist. It's a crystallized metamorphous rock at the bottom, a schist that can only form with high levels of temperature and pressure, meaning that there had to be a huge amount of rock on top of it pressing down with lots of pressure and temperature to form it. Similarly, the same thing like coal deposits. Like, you need a certain level of pressure to cause that to happen. It can't just like vegetation decomposes and boom, it turns to coal. So I'm not sure where he's going with some of those positions, but seems a little weird.
It was just way off in left field, and it was it just struck me as Maddox speaking in tongues. Basically, he does that occasionally. Like, he goes for a drive, in his Uber or whatever the fuck he drives, and he starts contemplating, and he comes up with these juicy things. Like, he's kind of implying that all evolutionary biologists were raised in a concrete jungle, and we don't know how fast vegetables can grow, or how quickly a yard can be overrun, But he knows because when he was 6 years old, he moved into a house.
And he's wicked fucking smart too.
I just want to say one thing. Dr. Josh is pretty funny. Dr. Josh has got some good lines.
I was gonna rib him because he says here, I'll bet that these scientists are just jealous of the guy in the video because he has all this knowledge but didn't have to go to school to get it. Sad. So I wanted to say to Dr. Josh, I bet Dr. Josh is jealous that there's a neurobiologist and a climate scientist in here, and he had to just settle on history.
Right. Yep.
I don't know Dr. Josh personally, but I love his content. I love listening to him talk. So
he's a rock star.
Yeah, he is, seriously.
Anyway.
Okay. There's a great Ken Hovind impersonation too.
Yeah. So standing for truth, the plant apocalypse is what I call that one. Maddox. Oh, here we go. I thought this was an interesting backstory for Maddox.
I'm a piece of shit, really.
Move on, scantology.
I told you it's not literal 24 years.
Sky out is dumb as shit and talks mad shit. It's hilarious. He's dumb as fuck and talks shit. It's hilarious.
Oh yeah. I'm sorry. Did you graduate college? No, you did not. Okay.
Yes, I did.
In what? In what? Some bullshit college somewhere you pay $2 for?
University of Alabama. So I went to University of Alabama.
This is so funny.
I had a full ride to the University of Alabama.
You ain't got no education. Your YouTube learned. You learn everything from YouTube and talk shit. Go get a fucking education from accredited college.
Where did you go to college? Where did you go to college?
I went to Grand Canyon University. It was an accredited college.
Mama University.
I went to the University of Alabama, bitch, boy. So what?
In what? In what?
Business.
Okay, then you're a piece of shit. You didn't do it for young Earth creationism.
You don't have a degree in that?
You don't have an education. You don't have an education in science. You don't have an education. Maybe SFT do, but you don't have an education in science. You never went to theology school. You're just pretty much making up shit.
Okay, so listen, bitch boy. From the
Okay, here we go. It gives you a little backstory on Maddox. Yeah, this is pretty good. This was a really good stream. It was fun.
the time I was 5 years old until I actually went to Bible school originally before I went to Alabama. But I was literally in church 4 days a week. We spent ministry meetings and Bible conferences almost on a weekly basis. And I listened for usually 2 hours every Saturday night. I would listen to people who've been preachers for 50 plus years, go into great detail about specific chapters of the Bible, different concepts. And I have had
Okay, this is when he was 5 years old, which I thought was interesting backstory for him, right? I don't know. I wonder if they bought him presents or toys for Christmas, or if they just made him read the Bible. I don't know.
Great deal of theological knowledge. And every night I used to have to sit there and read Charles Spurgeon's commentaries. From the time I was about 6 or 7 years old, my dad would make me read that shit at night when we went to bed while we studied the Bible. So if you think I don't understand theology, you, sir, are an arrogant fucktard who doesn't know how many inches are in his yard and are talking shit to me about what I know.
Oh, big deal.
Anyway, okay. Now, wasn't that interesting? 5, 6 years old, and he's reading commentaries by some theologian, and I don't know. I just never heard a backstory like that before from a Christian. So, anyway.
Well, actually, Charles Spurgeon is a Baptist legend. He's one of the of Baptist preachers.
Okay.
But still, he was bragging and virtue signaling.
5, 6 years old, and he's going to Bible study like 4 times a week and listening to I don't know. Anyway, that's our Maddox. We love him, don't we? I don't think there's a bunch of stuff in here I wanted Andrew Cumming to comment on. We got radiometric dating. That's something you might be interested in. Are you? So Standing for Truth produced this little list here. Apparently, the creationists sent a bunch of young samples of volcanic rock that they knew the age of, and they got skewed dates on potassium argon dating.
Yeah, that whole list that you see right there, the whole thing is bullshit. So potassium argon has a range of around up to 100,000 years before present, and if you look at the vast majority of the ages that they're measuring here, they're all in the hundreds to thousands of years old. You don't use potassium argon dating on those dates. There's an extension of potassium argon called argon dating, and that gets way, way more recent. That's what they dated the dating of the explosion at Pompeii. They used argon with that, and they were able to get it like within just a few years, the precision. So there are methods you can use that are appropriate for those dating ranges, but potassium argon isn't it.
Yeah, so if you send in a sample to be dated with a method that isn't made to date that sample, don't you end up with such minute samples that you can't possibly have anything other than air, right? Like they do radiocarbon dating on diamonds, right? So how in the hell do you do radiocarbon dating on something that's 1 billion years old and come up with detectable levels of carbon-14 ratios? I believe that is the problem. They keep sending in these samples. I don't know. Anyway, but they keep trotting them out over and over again. And then I was like, I almost had an aneurysm when I saw this. He pulled polystrate trees out of his butt again. And he went on and showed a whole bunch of them. And they're talking about millions and millions of years of sedimentation around these polystrate fossils. And I don't know. Anybody know about polystrate fossils, particularly? They're coming up?
One thing to add from me is just that you see evidence of weathering on one end and not the other. So you see that, for example, that they must have had some terrestrial existence. Some animal has come by and nibbled on it, or time has gone by, so it's weathered away after it was exposed and then reburied again. So it actually, in many of the polystrate fossils you find, there's plenty of evidence of age, not a recent Earth.
Yeah, here they are. Yeah. And, are these really millions of years of sedimentation around these polystrate fossils? I don't know. That's what he's claiming anyway, but you'd have to look into each one of them. But so that's about all I got, guys. So we can just open the discussion to anything anybody wants to talk. Oh, there's one other thing, and that was this part here. Who knows about red giants? Midnight. Midnight is here. Okay.
Hello. So Scott, I got a question for you. So the majority of stars are large giants, right? And supposedly they supernova in about 20 million years versus the supposed, life of our sun of like 5 billion. So the question I have for you is, if the vast majority of the stars in the universe was to supernova every 20 million years, where the flying F are all the supernovas?
Okay, stop.
Yeah, I feel like he's very wrong about that.
I think the stars go from like our yellow sun to being a giant red star as part of the stage of life of different stars. So it really depends on what kind of star you're talking about,
right?
What kind of giant it is and how it aged and where it came from. Like we're never, like our sun's never going to make a big black hole or even a small black hole. But others will, so I don't know what his problem is. He could actually probably read a book and find the answer to that.
Yeah,
but Scott, reading is hard.
Yeah,
I know, and you have to find somebody who's only educated on YouTube before he'll trust them. But still.
So where did he get 20 million years? Is he talking about the red giant phase, basically? I don't know. Well, okay, Josh.
Wait, call him Josh.
Dr. Josh.
Dr. Josh.
Yeah, digital.
Right, yeah.
I'm sorry. I forgot the doctor part. Sue me.
Oh no, I thought you were talking about Maddox, but then I noticed you were talking about.
Yeah. So anyway, that was bullshit. So just a lot of bullshit in that stream. But they had somebody sky out. He was like a victim who didn't know anything other than theology, and Skyo did pretty well for himself. He just kept pushing back on him. So
I don't know if he knows theology either.
I don't know what he knows. I don't know Skyo that well.
How does one know what they truly know?
How do I know what I truly know?
Besides,
I truly
what I
don't
think
know.
is
That's my
getting back to the red star thing, don't we see supernovas in the form of nebulae that are basically the remains of stars that have gone supernova? They don't stay bright forever. Right. In fact, they don't stay bright very long. And so what you do is you have these I can't think of the word, but dispersals of gas and junk. So,
well, we do observe supernova. I mean, I'm not quite sure when he says why aren't we seeing what? Why aren't we?
What happened? Jason, I didn't hear you.
You cut out, Jason.
Yeah, I lost audio.
Your audio's gone, Jason.
It's gone. It's in bad shape.
So you should have stayed outside with your sunglasses.
Why are we here?
I don't know what happened. Sorry.
That's okay.
You're back.
You were saying?
I was just saying, like he's saying, why don't we see more supernova? I'm assuming. I mean, we do see supernova. I guess the question is like, why don't we see more of them? I'm not sure. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why we see, like, we don't see the full universe. We are only scanning certain portions of the limited known universe at any one given time. But we do observe supernova. And so I'm not quite sure what his position is on that, or what is even the point. I mean, I have heard a lot of young Earth creationists say, why don't we see the formation of suns, of stars? And there's really good reasons for that because of the long-term time period it takes for formation. It may be
Actually, I believe we have observed the creations of new stars.
Yeah, there was one just recently, I think, a paper that we showed recently, where they caught one lighting up, I think.
Yeah. So we do see the creation of new planets, the creation of new stars, you know what I mean? So I don't know what John's talking about. Sylvie V was also being a dumbass on Twitter. Yeah, you know what I said? I was trying to read through that. He was responding to Cy Gart, and I was like, yeah, I can't read this Twitter thread.
I'm wondering, Mdel, if you or Fly Guy, if you've come across Standing for Truth, because you came across Otangelo Grasso, but if you like, in my personal opinion, out of all of the YouTube creationists that are around, like Otangelo and you guys had Maddox here, and plenty of others, my personal favorite is Standing for Truth, and I think he's more up your alley, Mdel, because his major thing is in things like genetics, is basically like his strong suit. So he gets into stuff that I think you would be much more familiar with than certain other creationists focusing on other fields. And so, have you heard of him? Just first of all,
yes, that Nick does sound familiar. I can't pinpoint where I've heard him, but I've heard his. But I've yet to. I mean, I don't mean this again. This is my first time here. I don't mean any disrespect, but I've never heard any creationist accurately discuss genetics at any level. So
do you know, nobody else will understand this reference, but you will, so I'm just going to bring it up. Do you know Mode for Truth guy on Paltalk? Yes. Right. So his kind of style of presentation, the way that he talks and the way that he argues, Standing is similar, but he definitely, it's as if you took Mode for Truth guy and set him about reading a bunch of genetics literature for a while.
Oh, sorry, I thought I was muted.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'll look him up and listen to some of this stuff.
I mean, I think he is an example of a person that will hit you with like a million different components, of which, of all those things he's trying to throw at you, if you're not on your A game and you're an expert in the field and can be like, that's not true, that's not true, that's not true. If you can't do that, then he constructs a theory or a hypothesis which is built on a house of cards that makes it difficult to refute. But I think if you look at the underlying components of what he's saying, somebody who is educated in the field would say, you said this, that's not actually supported. You said this, that's not supported.
That's literally what Dan does. Dan's entire channel has like gone in depth on every single one of this guy's claims because he's an evolutionary biologist. In return, he's gotten a big fat blacklist from Standing. Standing won't engage with him because he's absolutely petrified of being dunked on in front of an audience.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And Fly Guy, you already know Dr. Dan. I introduced you to his channel a while back, and they've gotten into debates. There's David P. Neff has a YouTube channel where they had a debate.
That was really funny.
Yeah, it was a fantastic one. I really enjoyed it, and I still from the second that conversation was over, I've been parading around giving Dan the win on that one. I think he pretty clearly had the win on that.
Standing turned into a simpering weenie the second he had to actually be confronted by someone who knows what they're talking about. It was super, super embarrassing, to be quite frank. But it was very fun to listen to.
I'm showing my bugs in the background. I hope it's not distracting.
What's the word with you guys today? What's going on? I just jumped in. I'm late to the party.
Oh, we did a little thing on John Maddox speaking in tongues about grass growing really fast, therefore young Earth creationism.
Dude, John Maddox is maybe a little bit. I'm not sure he's operating with like every single gear up there. You know.
I think the battery terminals are corroded.
Maybe he's like the individualist who thinks it's not true unless he observes something and then thinks about it, and then it's not. Then it's true to him.
Yeah, I heard him argue once. And hello, John. I know you're listening. You always are.
Yeah, he is.
You know, I heard him argue once that the pyramids of Giza were like Tesla pyramids, and thus ancient people had access to incredible technology that we have lost because of like genetic entropy or some shit like that. It was the funniest thing I'd ever heard in my life.
Yeah.
The man is not I was amused. I came in a little late, so I didn't catch all of it, but hearing him talk about how how much he knows about this kind of stuff with his business degree is pretty funny. I wouldn't dream about going onto like a business YouTube channel and start pretending like I know the first thing about business, because that's not where my education is. But that's what he does.
Well, there's something about a certain class of people that they look upward to what they don't know, and they don't see it. They're blind to it. They're blind to the amount that they don't know. And then they feel like they're experts in what little Wikipedia traversal they have done. And it's almost like there are two kinds of people is what I'm coming to, and it just sort of really bothers me. You know what I mean? It's like they don't realize.
I mean, I think, and tell me what you guys think. I feel like John actually does think that he's on to some grand hidden truth. Like, I think he's managed to convince himself that he really does have the secret that every single person who's got, you know, the scientific community, which has centuries of cumulative experience in this subject, that they've all missed it. But that John Maddox, who has his degree in business, has figured out the secrets. And he's managed to find the flaws in the scientific method that everyone else missed. I think he really does think.
You know what? If he actually did find it, I really wish John Maddox would share.
Well, he just shared. He told us that he was privy to some grass that grew really fast and ended up 6 feet tall in his backyard. And rather than the evolutionists apparently all live in urban jungles, and we're biased because we don't know how fast grass can grow.
Okay, maybe this is just maybe this is just a myth, but talking to plants helps them grow because you're literally feeding them CO2. right?
Oh my God, Midnight!
Yeah.
That's something you would send me a paper on. I'm sure.
Yeah, dude, I'm sure John went out there and he was like, listen, have you even considered that photosynthesis is one of the most complicated metabolic pathways that the body that the cell can undergo? Are you
No. You know, I take that back. I take that back, Erica. The grass actually died when he went there. The CO2 wasn't. I don't know. I can't think of a good joke, but
I'm being mean and spicy today. That's true.
That's all right.
You got to keep your own lab, so you're just pumped.
I'm pumped, yeah, and I'm sick and fed up of the pseudoscience. We had to go to this COVID panel this morning, listening to our campus doctor who runs she's a physician, been a physician for 20 years. She's talking about and this didn't even occur to me, but she was like, yeah, we just have enough vaccines to nip this whole pandemic in the bud in the United States. And there's only one reason why it's not gone away. And it's non-compliance by the unvaccinated, which is really cool. I'm really happy to hear that, teenagers and kids are dying because people can't, my free speech, so I'm energized and I'm irritated today.
Well, I mean, look, the only way you're gonna get everyone vaccinated is if you force it upon them, and of course, you can't do that. So you know what I mean?
But I think universities should be able to be like, hey, if you want to come to in-person class, maybe you need to show your vaccine card.
Yeah, did you see that Indiana ruling that Amy Coney Barrett said they couldn't? What was it? They could enforce vaccine mandates at their school.
Yeah,
right?
I remember because the meme on Twitter was like, if you vote in a pro-life Supreme Court justice, don't be surprised when she's pro-life, right? It's like she's like, sorry, dude. It's like I'm not gonna let students die. It's like I'm in favor of it. I mean, I don't think you should force people to get vaccinated. I just think that it's within the right of public places to be like, hey, you can't show up if you aren't because you're going to endanger other people.
Decades and decades ago, when I went from northeast Arkansas down to central Arkansas and switched schools, they had to provide, we had to provide my vaccination records and stuff. And then, as time went on and I needed new vaccinations, the school had to get a copy of that stuff. Because it's just smart, common sense. I thought Christians believed in love thy neighbor,
Yeah. CRISPR says we can't tell students to vaccinate. We can't ask if they're vaccinated. We can't even ask them to put a mask. My university, fortunately, because the state has a mask mandate, right? We're allowed to be like, hey, pal, you can't come in here unless you got a mask on. But they also specifically had to tell all of us, you are not allowed to ask if they're vaccinated and then segregate where people sit based off of that. And I was like, man, I'm just trying to not get the Delta variant, right? Just sit in the back. Do me a favor and please take it upon yourself to sit in the back.
So I was this morning. I was listening to a news article. Minnesota was down below 100 cases a day, and I thought it was ending. And we went out even and didn't wear masks for the first time in a year, and now we're up to 14 to 2,000 cases a day again.
Yep.
And they said it was because of the lack of buy-in on vaccination. Minnesota's really high. I think we're at 70%, but still. And I just had this moment of rage where I wanted to call this anti-vax friend of mine and tell him, "You fucker, what are you doing?"
We were so close.
I mean, it's like I went to Sam's Club this morning and there was a guy without a mask coughing, running up and down the aisles, just coughing his lungs out. And we ran out of the store basically. And it's like, God, are we back to this again? Because you assholes think that a couple of YouTube articles about mRNA are going to inform you enough that you're going to, I don't know. I'm really disgusted. I was just enraged this morning. I mean,
our campus physician was like, she was straight up on a rampage in front of all the TAs. There were a lot of us in this big auditorium, and she was like, she's like, this has pretty much been the worst time for me. She's like, people just don't want to listen. It's fine, whatever. But But I know that's very doomer. So the rest of the TA orientation was very fun, though. It was very enjoyable. I was telling Scott in the side chat, I got the keys to the lab, so I got to go in there and hang out and look at all the bones and the skulls that I can't afford to have replicas of myself because they're like $500. But I got to play with them, and it was a good time. I said on the guys on Twitter, I was like, man, someone asked me what my favorite Miocene ape was, and I just was astrally projecting from my body. I was like, this is the best thing ever. Like, I haven't gotten to hang out with people who are like into
oh my god, look what it is
forever. Oh hey Smokey, yeah, where you been, bud?
He wants to come on.
So what are the emojis?
Well, he didn't say, but it's a cloud, sunny cloud. I don't know. Can you put that up again?
Is Smokey an anti-vaxxer?
Smokey is Smokey, please no. But he's based in old Earth pilled, which we like to hear. Smokey dunks on the young Earthers a lot these days. I like
that is true.
He doesn't fall for the tricks, I mean, I'm sure I have the utmost faith that if Smokey had watched the earlier stream, he would have been like, hey, it's cool that you think that, but like, why are they dating new volcanic rock? Imagine proposing that slide that Standing showed to a geologist. Just imagine.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah. Yep.
Actually, I just got this new book by David Montgomery. He's got a book out. He's a geologist from the University of Washington. It's called The Rocks Don't Lie, which I'm reading is fascinating. It has a lot to do with Noah's flood. And so the intro is kind of like, look, I started to write this book because of this issue of creationists constantly asking me about like Noah's flood and flood events. And he goes into this whole thing about like where like intersections of geology and religion, but then he goes into all the detail of why it's just bullshit. It's a good book. So I would recommend it.
Good.
Yeah,
I'm trying to enhance my geology like formal knowledge because it's all tangential. But I was very pleased with the YouTube creationist reaction to the stream that Jordan and Mr. Wolford was on my channel the other day. After Standing had his channel deal where they solved the heat problem with dismantle as a heat sink thing. They do their whole deal. Jordan shows up with the math and he's like, here's why it doesn't work. It literally just breaks thermodynamics. It's fine that you think that, but it's just not going to work. And then Standing immediately does this community post, and hidden in the middle, he's like, well, obviously it would be multiple solutions. And Jordan was like, we tried this already, remember, in the McQueen debate. He was like, I showed you that you could have 2,000 perfect hypercane solutions and you would get rid of 0.02% of the heat, pal. It's just not going to work. Like, so it's just like, that's confirmation that you're doing the right thing when they're just hopping back and forth from solution to solution. But I'll have to check that book out, Jason. I've heard also that Annals of the Former World is a good geology book. It's not like a creationism thing. It's just one like the Pulitzer Prize a couple years back.
Annals of what world? What'd you call it?
Sorry, excuse me. Annals of a Former World.
Former world. Annals of a Former World. Okay.
I think that's it. I had it recommended by a geology friend.
Yeah, David Montgomery's specialty is geomorphology, so he really understands superficial processes, and he goes into all the facets of the Grand Canyon, and just lays it out like from a very logical perspective for a layperson can read it. I find it to be really, really good.
Jason, if you like that, you might have already read these, but I have two really good recommendations kind of in that vein. The Bible Rocks in Time is one of my favorite books on the subject. It's a thick boy, though. It is a fat book, but it's got a whole lot of stuff on, like, the whole first half is like, hey, theologically, young Earth doesn't really mesh, but even more importantly, it doesn't mesh with anything we see in nature. And then also Grand Canyon Monument to an Ancient Earth. Those are both excellent.
Oh, yeah, I've heard that. Yeah. I haven't read that,
but by the way, kids, that book is linked in the description. What was the other one you just recommended, Erica?
The Bible, Rocks, and Time is the first one, and then Grand Canyon Monument to an Ancient Earth is the other.
Oh, I
The
just
Bible
got that.
rocks in time. You know, if you say as one thing, the Bible rocks in time, it just means that the Bible rocks. Never mind, but you get the point, right?
I'm with you. Yeah, I'm with you.
The Bible will rock in time. I don't know. It's just a
That-
weird title.
That Grand Canyon book, Erica, is really cool. I was really
It's
excited
got
about it. I just got it.
It's so well done, and I had Ken Wolgamoth, one of the authors, on my channel, and he's just a cool dude. Like the people that went into that Grand Canyon book, it's like there's old Earth creationists, there's theistic evolutionists, there's secular scientists, there's people that don't give a shit either way. It's just all geologists coming in and saying, "Hey, listen, one thing you can't do is interpret the Grand Canyon as a young, catastrophic formation."
Exactly.
So, hey, Erica, I have a quick question for you. Have you read The Curiosity Gene yet?
I have not read The Curiosity Gene. I'm working through the Stormlight archives right now, which is
Well, it's very short, right? I think you would definitely enjoy it because, maybe you nitpick the hell out of it, but it should be a good book to read.
Yeah, I'll put it on the list.
Yeah, because I want to know. If I go ahead.
Kind of goes against the idea that we were talking about at one point, the idea that war precedes the advent of agriculture.
Not really.
That's an interesting question. I'm actually very excited, Dessel, because it's been quite some time. Like as a TEA for biological anthropology, I have to go to the lecture, so the undergrad lecture, and I'm really excited to see how the curriculum has changed in like the half decade it's been since I took it. I'm going to be interested to see what they're saying with regard to which came first.
Yeah, I'm interested in following that topic too. It seemed like you were more persuaded by the post-agriculture advent of war. And I go the opposite way because I think that war is ancient. Certain articles that I've read, though, they want to really carefully stipulate what they mean by war.
That's a good approach.
But some of the definitions that they're adopting involve, I think, too much criteria. You can get a basic sense of war that doesn't involve a bunch of stuff that they're including in it. But regardless, I do think that that's a really interesting issue, and it's also going to have major repercussions in terms of interpreting what the, instinctual nature of human beings are really like.
Yeah, there's a lot to talk about with regard to that. Regrettably, I have to go pick up some Chinese food, so I have to go. But on that note, Dessel, I think there's been some very interesting work on late genus Homo with regard to that I think is going to be, depending on how we interpret it, it's going to be very interesting. So, guys, I'll see ya. Love everyone. Gotta go.
So, Erica. Oh, shit.
Hey,
she didn't get my order. I want to put in my order.
We should have all given her an order.
God damn it.
We got a little thing going on. Dr. Josh got timed out, really?
What?
Yeah. Iron Jerry.
By who?
I think Iron did. Yeah, that ain't cool. So
no. Why'd you do that?
I don't. Dr. Joss is just joking around.
I think Iron Charioteer, from what I'm seeing in the comments section, I think he's doing it as a joke in response.
All right. I mean, if that's what it is, then whatever. That's fine.
It's kind of a nasty little joke.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what's going on. But
okay, so when Dr. Josh comes back, he gets a wrench. I didn't realize he didn't have a wrench.
Yeah. So, all right.
Bad on me. Hang on a second. I can find him. Oh my God, I can't even find him now.
Midnight. Sorry.
He did say he was just kidding. So, all right. So that's fine. Whatever.
So, Midnight, I want to talk to you for a second there because I've only read bits and pieces of the book that you sent me here. And so,
wait, what book was it again?
What is the title there? The one that you just mentioned.
The Curiosity Gene.
Yeah. Sorry, I was forgetting the title of it. But so this book, it argues for like the ancientness of war in terms of war being the selective pressure that brings on like the complicated nature of the human mind. And I'm really sympathetic to that point of view. But the only thing is that, like, if it's the case that agriculture comes first, that's only within the range of the last 12,000 years. So I think that does run contrary to what's being suggested in the curiosity gene, because it sounded like you were disagreeing with me when I said that they're at tension with one another.
Well, I really gotta read that book again. I gotta work on my memory, because the entire argument he tries to. Can someone mute?
I'll mute.
No, I think it was Jason, or maybe you. But the entire, like you said, the entire argument, the entire argument that the book tries to make, is that it tries to find the smoking guns as to where to where curiosity came from. Now, they said the smoking gun may have been warfare, but here's the thing: you can have warfare while also having agriculture. I don't really see what the issue is.
Yeah, definitely. There's no gripe there. It's just that there are some researchers now who are saying that war is really recent, and it was only brought on by the development of agriculture, which is within the last 12,000 years. If that's the case, then war actually wouldn't be around 2 million years ago, 3 million years ago.
But sorry to cut you off, but that's wrong, considering war has always been part of all species. Like, so even our distant cousins, like Neanderthals, I think they were like what I'm saying is that the people who put that are probably wrong. Jesus.
Yeah, just for the record, I do agree with you. I think that war is a lot older, but nevertheless, there is a movement going on right now suggesting otherwise. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Well, that's fine. I mean, there's a movement of everything. Like there's a movement of the electric universe. There's a movement of I don't know. I can't think of anything. Right. By the way, is this Otangelo or is this Smokey
or Danny?
Yes. Danny. Well, I think that coming out this digital.
Yeah, I don't think this is Otangelo.
I don't know if that's.
It's not
like Dr. Josh.
Yeah, he has flavors of Josh. Yeah.
I
He's
think
a
so.
fine Otangelo.
If I could finish. Yes, if I could finish. Yes, why is everyone interrupting me?
Can I finish, please? Can I finish?
Yes, can I finish, please? Can I finish, please? Yes, can I finish without being interrupted, please? Yes, okay, I'd like to know why, if you go back to the Big Bang event, I think that you cannot instantiate what is happening here in this universe, and I would like to know how you can instantiate all of the things following the Big Bang event.
You forgot to use the word.
This is what I think happens with. Can I finish, please?
Oh my god.
Oh my god.
Yes, well, obviously, you atheists are not interested in having a civil conversation, and so I will respectfully leave you atheists to burn in hell.
Rage quit.
Rage quit.
Perfect.
Oh my god.
What is did you see this comment?
Nice.
I like it.
And this one is even, it's kind of harsh.
Oh yeah, that's worse. Well, didn't he death wish her in a prayer?
Yes. Anything Waddington says about Smokey is well deserved.
Tried to pray her to death or something like that. Yeah, it was such a jackass. So digital.
Oh shit.
And
So,
maybe
Dr. Josh, you now have a wrench, so people can't time you out anymore. I don't think. Like everybody else has a wrench. My chats are completely blue.
Well, that way, Dr. Josh can post all his evidence of grounding of bundles of particulars to the ultimate.
Oh, I guess I don't want to say it out loud, but there's something that hasn't happened on this channel yet. I don't know. Well, I said it out loud, didn't I?
Well, you said something's not happened, but you haven't given any.
Yeah.
Any Bloody Marys or anything.
Right. Yeah, we haven't had Matt Dillahunty on this channel yet. We have had Aaron Rado.
Matt Dillahunty has not been on here.
No, he has not. So anyway.
If you guys come across any good articles on the scientific study of instinct and the development of instinct,
that's what I'm going to start looking at, because, like I say, that's how I got into the whole field to begin with.
Yeah, because I took a look recently, and I really didn't come up with nearly the kind of literature base that I wanted. So if anybody comes across good articles, I would count MDell's article here as one good one, because it shows innate response.
I did to go back and read it, but I once read a Scientific American article talking about genetic memory, and how instincts could be seen as genetic memories. We inherited from from other life.
Are you bringing the wool?
What?
Are you bringing the wool?
The woo.
What?
The woo.
No, I'm not bringing. I'm not bringing the woo.
Don't bring the woo here.
It's literally not woo. Where else? Where else? Where else would instincts come from?
Okay. Well, that's what we were talking about. And if you had basically a statistical tendency for a certain visual input to hash out along to reduce down to a couple of neurons firing into the amygdala, you would have a fear response for a particular pattern. And that is very interesting. So,
yeah, the best stuff that I have on the evolution of instinct is really old. It's from Konrad Lorenz's old paper. It's called The Evolution and Modification of Behavior. There's a ton of interesting stuff in that paper, but it's written from decades and decades ago. So I need some up-to-date stuff. And I went looking recently, and I just couldn't find much. The most that I found is that in terms of bird flying patterns, some scientists are not crediting that to instinct as much anymore. They're suggesting that there's learning behavior involved. I came across some papers saying that. But in terms of the actual, how robust is the scope of instincts in human beings and other organisms, and what does that set of instincts comprise of? What are the instincts and so on? And I would really like some more information on that. Like I said, I went digging and I just couldn't find a ton.
I wonder why the lack of interest, because instinct is just, it's one of the most interesting things about the animal kingdom. It's always been shown as something that the animal kingdom has, but we don't. I say always been shown, always been talked to me about as something that, because we depend so much on culture and our brain power, that we don't have instinct.
Yeah, well, not the best, I guess, but some interesting stuff I've come across from Dan Dennett. He talks about the development of consciousness from a kind of proto-consciousness. And you could understand the kind of selection that he's talking about as resulting in things like instincts, where it's not really a conscious deliberation process that results in the behavior, but something that's just like a computer hardwired response. And he talks about that a bit. And I think that that's probably the proper way to go. But in terms of scientific detail and scientific experiment and study, all I've got is Lorenz going back decades.
Do we even know that if science has a good definition of instinct, or is it once again the the boundary problem of when is it instinct and when isn't it?
So what are you looking for, Dessel? Are you looking for like which instincts, or are you looking for how they wire genetically? Sort of
yeah, both. I want both, and like another thing is there's this huge debate about evolutionary altruism, about whether or not altruism can emerge from evolutionary dynamics by itself, or whether or not it would be due to something else like cultural influence over time, cultural rather than Darwinian evolution. And so you have anthropologists like Joan Silk published a paper, Chimpanzees are indifferent to the welfare of unrelated group members. So like, I think that those kinds of studies are really helpful too, because it does help you gauge what are actually the components of our instinctual nature by testing to see like how we respond to other creatures and all this other stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, there's I gotta draw a bad brain. Kind of looks like that. And then okay, out here we have the occipital lobe. Okay. And we need a new color. And what's interesting is that
I don't even want to say what that looks like. Jesus.
I know. Fuck you. Bad brain. I admitted it was a bad brain from the beginning.
Yeah, okay. I didn't see what it looked like until now.
So Dessel, out here we actually have like a retinotopic map of your visual field actually in the cortex back here. And what happens is it gets a whole bunch of processing through two different streams. One of the streams goes to the temporal lobe, okay? And that helps to identify objects, like a snake or whatever. And from there, it feeds off into, your frontal cortex. And that's how you first run into something, it'll go through this, and about 200 milliseconds later, it'll process, and you'll say, oh, that's a cup, that's a square, that's my mom. There's also a little special part here for just faces, but we won't talk about that. But anyway, so now there's another part, okay, basically at the center, the amygdala, which is going to be your fight or flight reaction, right? So if we had a fear of snakes, that sort of thing. So this particular, somehow genetics would cause a wiring so that there was a connection from here to your amygdala, basically. Okay? And if that happened, then that animal would be more likely to jump every time it saw something that resembled a snake. So, I mean, that is possible with just statistics. So the wiring of the cortex, basically, and the very early, embryological development of the cortex could set up a signal on this pathway right here that would give you, object recognition. And then the other thing that's instinctual is when a deer pops out, it can walk within an hour or two. It can stand up, and those sorts of things are probably wired the same way. But that, if you find any papers on that stuff, I'm really interested in that.
So this brings up. So there's a few things going on. I want to respond to what you just went through, and I also want to respond to Midnight about what we were talking about before. So with this, I like that you're pointing out, how the information is traveling to various different parts of the brain. And so this kind of gets into the whole philosophy of mind thing about, whether or not consciousness is dependent on the brain. Is physicalism true? And here's the thing. I'm going to explain how, because there's a researcher, Stanislas Dehaene, in his book Consciousness in the Brain. And the idea of understanding consciousness as a multi-system process, that it's basically a multiple systems working in unison with one another, and that these systems are brain dependent. And so he tests that idea. He introduces an image to a person to look at. And what he does is he calculates what he calls the functional threshold time of the visual information to be sent to the other areas of the brain for processing. And so he'll show the image to a person, and then just before that functional threshold time, he shrouds the image with another image for just a split second, and then takes it away, basically like screwing with the visual system. And the visual system doesn't, it's not long enough for the visual system to discern the difference, so it doesn't send any information to other parts of the brain. And the interesting thing is that in those cases, there is no corresponding conscious experience of the image in the patient's mind. So it shows an interesting correlation there, and is some evidence, I would argue, for the physicalist mantra that nothing mental happens without something physical happening, because in this event, the information was not sent to the multiple other components that would be required for consciousness on this account, and in these cases, you did not have consciousness. So that was that's one thing. And then turning over to Midnight, this thing that we were talking about agriculture, Nick Lane, in the book I quoted earlier, The Vital Question, he talks about, like, he gives this funny little anecdote about somebody basically says that during the Renaissance, you had murder, you had bloodshed, you had all this crazy stuff going on, but it produced the Renaissance and Michelangelo and Leonardo da Vinci. And by contrast, outside of the area where the Renaissance was, for example, outside of Italy, you had Sweden, that at that time had what's described as brotherly love and kumbaya and everything like that, and centuries of peace. And so the person makes this quip, well, what did that brotherly love produce? All it produced was just the cuckoo clock. And the Swedish government responds back, and they said we don't make cuckoo clocks. And Lane is bringing this up basically to say that what's responsible for creating things in the natural world, like something like natural selection, it's not.
It's the struggle. It's the fight for survival. You know what I mean?
Right. And so you get my point there. And so I want to focus on the difference between Homo sapiens versus other organisms. For example, you have, in the case of Homo sapiens, 100 trillion, it's 80 now, 80 trillion neurons.
86.
Oh, yeah. Okay. 86. There you go.
I'm a stickler for details.
Wait a minute. Were there 86 trillion neurons?
In the human brain?
No, 86 billion.
Billion.
Is it billion? I'm sorry.
Yes.
So you have that, and there's no other organism that even comes close. Likewise.
Wait. Hold on. I need to say something, because the elephant has literally more neurons than we do. 256. So how in the fuck is the elephant not driving cars and we are?
So that's an interesting fact that I did not know. I was going through some recent neuroscience stuff, and the emphasis was on how different the human brain was from other organisms, and it used the example of dogs and octopuses, and the octopuses were what came closest, but they weren't even close. So it's interesting to hear that elephants actually exceed us. That's something I did not know.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. It's kind of weird. The book. The curiosity gene actually touches it. It's so well. I think it's so well written, right? Because it talks about how basically, how evolutionarily speaking, the brain isn't really that efficient, considering it takes 20% of energy. Caloric, whatever, you get the point. The caloric intake. You know what I mean? Not to mention a bigger brain. Makes it harder for the women to be, to bear children because of the narrow birth canal. You know what I mean? Yet somehow.
So I mean, like I just like elephants. I can totally grant that. That's cool that that's the case. But like comparing the difference between human and chimpanzee. not only is there a difference in terms of brain case size and brain functionality, the complex things that our brains can do, but there's also a difference.
Which chimpanzees are you talking about? Because I'm pretty sure there are some chimpanzees who have the same size brain we do, but they just, I don't know why, but you know what I mean.
I don't know about that. Usually when I'm reading about chimp brain sizes, they're comparatively much less. I could be wrong about that, though.
Okay, hold on.
Even if it's the case that there are some that approximate ours that I'm unfamiliar with, nevertheless, I think we can both be pretty assured that chimpanzees do not have the cognitive ability that humans do overall. They may.
How do you know?
Because we can test what they're able to do, and we know.
A lot of them. Yeah, a lot of them are pretty smart.
Yeah, pretty smart, but not nearly as smart as we are. Like, I'm not denying that other animals can be incredibly intelligent. I think that they can be. It's just I'm trying to highlight differences between us and our closest ancestors. And the reason why I'm trying to do that, not just with the brain that I was trying to focus on, but also with things like dexterity, the ability of our joints to be they are far more dexterous than our closest relative.
Okay, I'm trying to find. Sorry, I'm trying to find, because, okay, this thing now, it says there's 93 billion neurons. I guess I just keep changing.
Yeah, I guess. But, well, we can safely go within the range of 80 to 100, I think. Why don't we do that, since all the numbers seem to fall within that range?
Okay, total number of neurons in the brain: generic rodent brain 12 billion, generic primate brain 93. But wait, hold on. Generic primate brain. It doesn't say human.
Okay, a vast amount of those are in the cerebellum, actually.
So total number of non-neurons in the brain,
in the cortex.
46 billion. The total number of non-neurons in the brain, 46 billion in generic rodent brain. Generic primate brain, 112 billion. Mass cerebral cortex, 1,156 grams, 54 grams, 1,412 grams. Neurons, cerebral cortex, 2 billion for genetic rodent brain, and generic primate brain, 25 billion.
I gotta mind my billions and trillions here, because I screwed that up. And there was a previous conversation I had where I was describing the Big Bang, and I said it went up to 80 trillion degrees, and that's totally off. It's actually it's 18.
All right, speed. Here's an interesting article. It's called "The Human Brain in Numbers: A Linearly Scaled Up Primate Brain."
So let me just I just want to wrap up my point, because I got it 3/4 of the way through. Highlighting differences in dexterity, scientists will point out how this is useful for throwing projectiles, for example. And so you have differences in terms of brain capacity, differences in dexterity, and you could argue that would just be the result of hunting. But then again, our closest relatives hunt as well. And it seems far too drastic of a difference to be due to that alone. Instead, what I think is going on is intragenic competition between human beings. And that would be the result of the development in intelligence, in terms of developing hunting for war strategies, and in terms of the throwing of projectiles and engaging in warfare.
Right.
If war in fact was the main player, or the status quo back then during our development, that would explain a lot.
Right, I don't disagree with. Well, there is something I disagree with in the sense that humans are not the only ones who fight with each other. You know, the book, the Curiosity Gene. It actually points out that whatever explanation you gave for humans, it could easily just as work out for other animals. This is why this is what makes Darwin's theory of evolution so good. Yeah. He might have gotten a lot of things wrong, but he got a lot of things right. You know what I mean? It apply to all organisms. You know what I mean? Other primates also fight with themselves. Like, yes, I remember, like one thing. Hang on. One thing that really stuck out to me, in the book, The Curiosity Genes, it was when he was talking about, how this lone, this lone chimp was minding his own business, and then you have like 3 or 4 just come out of nowhere and just beat the shit out of it, no reason, just no reason at all. I'm like, what the fuck?
So
you know what I mean?
You mentioned that the same thing could apply to other organisms. And so I would just respond there that I think it's dependent on ecological niche, because in the cases of like
yeah, obviously, but
right. So let me just get this out there real quick, Midnight. It's that like you take bonobos who stayed in the forest, but Homo went out on the savannah. So that there's much less opportunity for things like camouflage and stuff like that. There'll be more of a likelihood for actual warfare engagement in that scenario, because you can't as easily hide from your enemies.
Well, right, but at the same time, nothing stopping those bonobos from leaving the nest, so to speak.
Sure.
You know what I mean? I don't know. I think you should finish the book.
Oh yeah, I've only read bits and pieces of it so far. I would definitely want to go through, read the whole thing, because it's one of the hypotheses that I'm most sympathetic toward in terms of like human evolution.
The Curiosity Gene. I mean, I know the title's a misnomer because there is no one gene for curiosity, but it was interesting to read.
Yep. And I think that the point that you make about how our closest relatives also engage in hostile conflicts with one another is a clue that, warfare, at least broadly understood, and not with all of these extra criterions, extra conditions that some researchers want to add on to it. But broadly understanding war, I think that that's a really good indication that it's ancient.
But I often wonder how much of a role human chromosome fusion 2 plays, right? Because many of our cousins have 24 pairs of chromosomes, whereas we have 23. Right now, Speed, you might know this. Are there any other chromosome fusions in nature besides humans?
Yes. Mice, tons of them, hundreds.
I think guinea pigs is another example.
So then what? So could that be a contributing factor to?
Yeah,
No, I just wonder. I thought that our fusion wouldn't be the only one. I just wasn't sure. But I still think. Hold on, Speed. Sorry, I still think that plays a part into who we are now. Somehow.
For one thing, we lost a chunk of genes on that fusion. Basically, right around the fusion site, there was a loss, and that loss could well have rearranged the human cortex. So, but speculative, highly speculative. But we did lose some genes.
By the way, did you read? I didn't read it yet. By the way, but did you read that article of how evolution creates genes? I really gotta read that.
No, but it's just one of the many things I really want to get to because that was a good article.
Yeah.
Do you remember the author's name?
I do not. I can go back and look because I posted it in my own server. I literally have a server to post articles in.
I've got your email. I can go find it, but I really need to look at the one. That was a pretty good one. Want some others today. We got about 5 minutes left, guys. So Jay is here.
Oh wow.
What does Jay want to tell us? You're here.
Oh,
I'm sure you're here. Can you prove it? Sorry, Dad. Just wanted to fuck with you.
A Christian? Are you a Christian now?
Huh?
Are you a Christian now? You haven't changed?
Huh?
You haven't changed it? Well, you've been hanging around praise. I thought maybe some of that fucking plasticity would wear off on you.
And then whenever Jefferson does a thing on Darth, he might have influenced you to become a Christian.
Yeah. I thought you were referring to like Sidney Winston's video where he at the end of his video said I'm a Christian.
What?
Because him and I had a conversation. We were disagreeing about something in the Bible, and he was on my channel, and I called him a kook. That was the worst name I called. I said, "Yeah, you're being kind of kooky." Apparently, that kind of hurt his feelers. I think a little bit, maybe. Oh. So he did a video afterward, and then I found out from my brother, and I think was it Scott? Scott, did you see it? Oh no, it was Peter. Never mind.
No.
It was Peter. It was Peter and my brother. They were telling me, they're like, yeah, apparently you're a Christian now. And I'm like, huh? And he goes, my brother goes, yeah, you might want to. My brother goes, yeah, you might want to call him up and apologize. And he did it. Apparently, you guys disagreed and about something, and so he did a video and calls you a Christian. And I said, okay, well, I don't have to apologize for calling him a kook because that's pretty kooky.
Well, for a while there, I thought this was going to be your public apology, but no, I guess not.
Oh, you want to make it your public apology? No.
Anyway,
hopelessly devoted to
Scott,
you.
As I'm jumping off the cliff, I regret nothing.
Yeah, the last thing. Yeah. Yep.
So this has been fun.
Yeah.
It was a good weather report day.
I actually talked more than actually talked rather than stay quiet. Woo!
You did.
And you didn't bail suddenly.
So Des will hang around. Des will hang around for a minute when we go backstage.
Sure.
Yeah, I was going in and out because I saw Dr. Josh was hanging around. And I was like, nah, I don't want him throwing my hat.
Oh, come on now. Dr. Josh is cool.
If I want the Dark Dawkins treatment, I'll go to the Reformation server and I'll get the Dark Dawkins treatment. Thank you very much.
Why do people still? Why does your brother still give him oxygen? Like, is he that entertaining? Like, honestly,
Darth.
Yeah, yes.
Well, considering Jeff doesn't invest that much time, I don't know what your complaint is. He might do a video on him, what? Maybe one a week, maybe one every 2 weeks, maybe two.
It's just every time he goes live, even it's Darth Dawkins. Every time I talk to him, I'm doing a video on Darth Dawkins. I'm like,
he's got twice the subscribers as I do now.
Jesus.
Just talking about, he's like 560 subscribers now. Just talking about.
Yeah, are you jealous, Jenny?
No, it's fine. Because I look at Germania's channel. And I'm like, how the fuck does this guy have so many more subscribers than I do? This fucking channel shit.
Wow.
Sorry, Ger, if you're listening, dude, just picking.
Yeah.
Because he'll do the same thing I do every once in a while. Like, yeah, I didn't like that one so much, and he'll pull it, he'll unlist it, shit like that.
His live stream the other day drew just a ton of people. I mean, it was amazing.
Wait, what live stream?
Germania did a live stream sometime this weekend, I think, or something, and he had what did he have?
I think it was Friday evening, and I went in there for a few minutes and then left, and then came back, and people had just piled in there. It was just
and he had 65 likes or something like that. I'm like, fuck it, I got to dislike this video.
You got to keep it even.
That's right.
Yeah.
So it's not an echo chamber.
Damn him. Okay, guys, we're going to end it for the day.
Shoot this bitch in the head.
Exactly.
Shoot this bitch in the head. I got to figure out what the hell I'm doing. Okay. See you all out there, and thanks, everyone.